Welcome, this is a recorded session of the Post-Quantum Cryptography Conference of the PKI Consortium. This conference would not have been possible without our sponsors, PQ Shield, SSL.com, Entrust, Keyfactor, HID Global, and the organizational support of the Post-Quantum Cryptography Working Group of the PKI Consortium, and in particular, Entrust, Keyfactor, and Logius. Would you like to join the PKI Consortium? Go to pkic.org/join, or contact us if you would like to become a sponsor.
All right, we're going to get started. I'm Samantha Mabey. I'm from Entrust. I just wanted to start off by thanking Paul and Albert and everyone else involved in pulling together this fantastic event for us. It's the third year, my third time attending, so thank you to them and everybody involved in pulling that together. Lots happened since we all met last November, so it's definitely going to be an informative couple of days. And without further ado, let's keep things going. I'm pleased to introduce who Andy from NIST was hyping up. So we've got Morgan Stern here, transitioning national security systems to a post-quantum future. Morgan being the Senior Quantum-Resistant Cryptography subject matter at the National Security Agency. So over to you.
All right, thanks for having me. Let's see if, do I know how this works? No, I don't. All right, very good. All right, well, I see, it's just on a nice delay. All right, well, thanks for your introduction, and I really am glad I'm going after Andy, and I'm really glad that during the Q&A, Mike Owensworth asked about the difference between NIST and NSA, because then I can set up completely the why am I up here talking. So for those wondering about the difference between us, NSA has lots of cybersecurity responsibilities, but sort of the core of these, dating back 7 or so decades, is that the director of NSA serves as the national manager for U.S. national security systems, which, what is a national security system? Well, there's a whole lot of them. The Department of Defense, the intelligence community, anything they have is likely to fall under that. And if they want to use a cryptographic algorithm, the director of NSA, which more or less means the Cybersecurity Directorate, where I am, needs to approve it and set those requirements and write those, approve those standards. So I'm sort of hoping here to convey sort of the diversity of the systems we have and show where these commercial products are going, where they fit in. So just by example, Department of Defense has well over 1 million employees. They're spread all across the globe. They have to securely communicate. They need minimal downtime. How do you do this? Well, they paid some money to ARPA a few decades ago, who made a little sign called ARPANET that I guess people have heard of, which later developed into the NIPRNet today, which is this backbone infrastructure for the Department of Defense. We also are in charge of large numbers of classified networks. The Department of Defense, if you've ever been to a military base, they're big. They're kind of like cities. So they have industrial control systems. So NSA actually plays a role in standards for industrial control systems. The GPS constellation, which I guarantee everyone right now is using, that's run by the U.S. Naval Observatory, which puts it under its cryptography and security under NSA, and of course what you would probably think of if you think of defense, weapons systems. Okay, so how have we been playing for a number of years in this commercial space? I think the big breakthrough came at the turn of the century. The Committee on National Security Systems released a policy saying that folks should use commercial products to deploy faster, reduce costs. But anytime you're deploying commercial products, they have to be validated against NIST standards and using NIAP processes for independent validation to make sure we are buying what we think we're buying. And with that, we were tied very closely with NIST's development. In 2005, we made the then unprecedented announcement of actually saying, here is the commercial cryptography that you can use yourself if you so choose, that we consider good enough to protect our most tippity top secrets. And that was Suite B. We've updated that many times over the years. 2016 is when we did pretty substantial changes to aid with crypto agility and said the reason we are doing this, we're allowing more variation now than usual because we want folks to save their big transition money for the coming post-quantum transition. When post-quantum comes, we are going to have to transition fast, and we see it coming soon. Skip ahead to May 4th, 2022, when National Security Memo 10 was signed, telling the U.S. to actually be off quantum vulnerable crypt by 2035. It laid out what lots of agencies should do, including the NSA, and told us to make standards and a timeline. And I am here proud to say today that the final CNSA 2.0 standards have been released. You can see the guidance on our website, and we lay out a bit about our expected timelines, which I'll go into today. So sort of the Cliff Notes of National Security Memo 10, because I know everyone loves to read government documents. You know, the Memorandum on Promoting United States Leadership in Quantum Computing while mitigating risks to vulnerable cryptographic systems. And they missed a really great opportunity to have a really long backronym there. But so here's the Cliff Notes version. Is we have to be off of quantum vulnerable crypt by 2035 to the greatest extent possible. That from a government standpoint, 13 years is very fast. And to make sure people didn't jump the gun, they explicitly said, as longstanding in the national security realm and federal policy, look, federal agencies aren't allowed to buy unstandardized post-quantum crypt. Just because someone says it is, it's not post-quantum unless it's standardized. NIST had 90 days after they released their first standards to actually give the deprecation of quantum vulnerable crypt. I was really excited to see your paper come out, Andy. We had slightly different timelines. We had a year from the memo to start providing our guidance, which is why in late 22 we actually tentatively announced what we were expecting for CNSA 2.0. So I think this might be, the world premiere of this table, the final form of the CNSA 2.0 table, where I get to delete the column that says what's currently in it, versus what will be in it in the future. So here we have the final form of the CNSA 2.0 suite. There shouldn't really be surprises if folks have been to my earlier talks, and if people haven't, then let me quickly go through it. For symmetric cryptography, AES and SHA-2 have been on our list of approved algorithms since Suite B days, almost 20 years ago. They are the gold standard, and they continue in CNSA 2.0 with modern parameter sizes. We've added ML-Chem to do key agreement, and ML-DSA 8.7 for signature with just those parameter sizes. In addition, unlike in Suite B, our predecessor, the previous suite, we do, for narrow use cases, have specific algorithms, and I'll go into this a little more. We have these because we have timelines we have to meet, and because our goals are to move to this quantum-resistant future as soon as possible. And so we have LMS or XMSS, really either of the single hash trees from NIST 800-208 can be used to sign your long-term hardware. We started messaging this 3 years ago now because we need things done by 2035. And when you do the math on hardware, you expect hardware to sit around. You expect hardware to easily last 10 years when deployed at the scale we deploy it. And so, you start backing off. We expect people today, when they're acquiring gear, should be able to write into their contracts the firmware signing. Similarly, SHA-3 is added for that similar validation use case, internal hardware systems, to make sure that we can do things. People ask how we pick what we pick. I guess I got a little bit ahead of myself. All right. I say there's 5 things that influence how we selected CNSA 2.0. First and foremost, security. It's in our name. Otherwise, we'd just be the national agency. But I do want to say the security of a primitive is not the security of a system. People say, why aren't you using X? There's this particular security proof that's really awesome that X has that Y doesn't. We are looking at the security of a system. If a primitive is difficult to securely integrate into an entire system, it is, in a really important real-world sense, less secure, regardless of what of the cryptanalysis of the particular primitive. Secondly, simplicity. We have there's over 1 million employees. I don't know how many sysadmins there are. I do not know how many program managers there are buying things, but there's a whole lot. We want those program managers to be able to check off a few boxes and know that NSA is then going to approve their system. We don't want them to have to hire an army of policy wonks to go in to determine whether the thing they buy is going to be good. Validation. When they are buying, they should be able to know when going to any of you folks, is this CNSA 2.0? And I'm really thrilled with NIST putting out the standards, because now they can. There are NIAP labs that provide a really simple path to certify the NIST standards, and we are not going to allow unstandardized algorithms in commercial NSS. We haven't for 20 years, and we aren't going to. Ease of acquisitions. We need to get things done by 2035. Within Department of Defense, there are 5-year funding cycles. If our users can't meet the security requirements for 10 years, that is not our users' fault. That is our fault. We have picked the wrong standards. This is critical. We failed in our goal. That is very much driving, like I said, the 800-208, which I expect to have continue to be in this ecosystem for a very long time as a result. And then last but not least, universality. A successful system is going to grow beyond its initial operating plan, even beyond the dreams of the program manager who bought it. When they made ARPANET, they were not thinking about architecting NIPRNet. And at some point in the future, 2 successful systems will have to interoperate, and they might have very different form factors. And when that happens, I don't want them to say, well, we're going with an interoperability mode that is weak. All right. So with that out of the way, now that we've had CNSA, we also have more formal timelines. Now, any particular product, any very specific technology, Andy brought up, say, the smart card, there might be a separate timeline where NSA will give separate guidance to our website through talks like this. Fine. As a broad rule, now that the algorithms have been finalized last year, starting in 27, new NSS acquisitions are expected to be capable of being quantum resistant. Not that your network is going to be, not that it's doing the key exchanges today. We expect, though, that if you're buying hardware, it will be capable. In 2030, we expect the baseline for your system to be capable of quantum resistance. Once again, maybe you haven't turned it on for interoperability testing. That's fine. But by 2031, the expectation is quantum resistance will be flipped on by the end of 2031, which means by end of 2031, for those of you wondering what sorts of dates you're targeting if you're trying to sell to the Department of Defense or the intelligence community, by the end of 2031, if they have a system that cannot be run in a quantum resistant mode, it is very likely that they will be looking to replace it by that date. Okay. This is good. Originally, there were supposed to be pauses. And at first, I'm like, drat, the pauses didn't go through in my email. But now that I have this and it doesn't quite work, I'm really excited that my pauses were cut out of the slides sent. All right, I'll go with four concrete steps today, and then I'll go into some more details that folks were asking about. Look, why did we start talking about QR signatures in 2022? Well, that 2027 requirement sort of requires it, okay? If part of your transition plan is we'll have gear in place by 2027, but maybe we won't get the software upgrades to actually run quantum-resistant authentication until 29. Well, for that to actually be a good plan, your root of trust is going to have to be quantum resistant. So where possible, and in my discussions with many of you folks, it sounds like it's pretty possible in lots of places these days. There should be a QR signature for root of trust. And I just generally suggest that as a best practice going forward now for the community. We need to update standards to support quantum resistance, and NSA is involved in various international standards groups, and many of you are, and many of my colleagues have worked with many of you over the years, and I'm really glad to be speaking to you all here. But in particular, what this means is, from DoD's perspective, what we are working towards is we're ensuring that ML-Chem 1024 is supported as a key agreement. Okay, there's some confusion, or there's some. Well, which NIST standard do we go with? We made sure to pick exactly one in each category. And as long as that one is supported, among many others, we expect there to be negotiation in these protocols. But as long as ML-Chem 1024 is supported, that helps us achieve our goals by our timelines. And similarly, we need ML-DSA 87 supported. There's been certain questions recently, and now I feel awful going really down in the weeds here. And I'm happy to talk offline with anyone who wants. In FIPS 204, there's like a few signatures technically laid out, and so we went with the specific name of the specific one we wanted, but maybe colloquially people thought it was something else. So it is not #MLDSA 87, it is MLDSA 87. I'm happy to discuss the technical details about that offline with anyone. Here's another big concrete step that really, I guess, is why I was glad to be given this chance. Quantum resistant certificate authorities. We need to start setting them up, okay? We hear, authentication isn't going to happen for a while. That's true, but authentication, you can't even start to think about how it will happen if you can't chain back. Otherwise, what you're doing is not actually a realistic test of what's necessary to achieve full QR. If you want to in any way have anything realistic, what does the new hardware have to do for edge devices? You're going to have to start setting up real CAs in real world-like places. And for other companies and out there, and I'll tell you, I've been telling the services for many years now. In DoD, we have 5-year acquisition cycles. I don't know what the rest of your acquisition cycles are. If you haven't started going QR, you really need to start discussing whether this is part of your regular acquisition or additional monies need to be brought up. Okay, here's where I really do wish I had the pauses. There were questions about hybrids. For some reason, people seem to think that NSA is vastly anti-hybrid, and I apologize for that. Here's my 5-minute attempt to go over the view, and I'm happy to once again chat a lot more offline. We want to transition quickly, we want to transition securely. Those are our goals. If you're not all transitioned, it's not secure, especially in things like PKI. If you're looking to transfer by 2035, or in this case, 2035 is the present date in NSM 10 for all the government, national security systems are aiming, for the most part, except where otherwise possibly described, the baseline is going to be end of 31. Okay, that's fast. That's 7 years. Okay, just under. You don't build brand new standards in 7 years. You use the standards you have today that have served us well for a decade, 2 decades in many cases. So, if I'm looking at IPsec, if I'm looking at setting up a secure tunnel, this is going to mean I'm going to have a quantum vulnerable and a quantum resistant key agreement. And people call that hybrid, that's fine. I mean, hybrid, as Andy said, might mean different things to different people. Okay, if I wanted to use just ML-Chem 1024, which, maybe for aesthetic reasons. I'm a mathematician. Maybe I prefer that. That require really big structural changes to a protocol. And, that do you want to throw out hardware in order to just do that? That is not a way to get this done quickly. Whereas there are very fine drafts out now for that. On the other hand, that's kind of the exception, not the rule, I'd say. In most cases, adding a hybrid agreement is going to require a new standard, and more importantly from our perspective, or not more, equally important from our perspective and with NIAP, it requires more validation and new validation. And going back to our 5 criteria for how we select things, hybrid agreements do not offer quantum-resistant cryptographic security beyond what a pure quantum-resistant option is. They simply do not. So NSA, for example, expects that our CNSA compliant protection profile, which should be appearing soon, will use just ML Chem 1024. Okay, that just you're hearing it. That is our expectation. There are various other profiles which similarly will be done in similar ways. And obviously later we might find more profiles for interoperability. We are not saying that this is the way forward for the whole world. We're saying within the broad ecosystem, national security systems are a part, and they have to be done by 2030, by end of 2031. What? Oh, sorry. All right. That said, things are slightly different over in PKI land because, PKI transitions, they take a long time. We have done many of them in DoD PKI, for example. The Department of Defense has been a big user of this technology and a big supporter. And we recognize that any certificate authority that you stand up today is going to be valid when we start standing up quantum-resistant CAs. And if you look today, you can your gateway can accept things signed with RSA. It can accept things signed with ECDSA with elliptic curves, and that's not considered hybrid. That's just an ecosystem. That is how PKI works. It is a glorious and impressive giant system. We expect that in the future, during the transition period, we will, in addition to those 2 types of signatures, we'll have gateways that will accept MLDSA certificates. And in some circumstances, let's say a gateway very well might need 2 or 3 different identities. An identity to talk to devices that are capable of quantum resistance, and a separate identity to talk to devices that have not upgraded. This follows exactly what we've done when we transitioned from RSA 1K to 2K. It is exactly what we did during the decade-long transition from SHA-1 to SHA-2. There's no reason the MLDSA transitions are going to look very similar. These aren't easy transitions, but this is a known pathway. This is not the part of the transition that is unknown. The thing we really don't foresee, given the well-trod history on this, is a device needing a single certificate or a single ID on it that happens to both be have a quantum vulnerable aspect and a quantum resistant aspect. That's going to require really large new standards. It's going to really dramatically increase the attack surface when so many attacks involve things like certificate parsing. And it's really going to dramatically slow any transition if all of our devices need to be upgraded to this completely new framework. All right, with that, I'll go with my four takeaways. So specifications for a quantum-resistant future are here, and end of 2031. That's the date you want to think if you're looking to sell stuff. Everyone wants to buy many will want to buy by end of 31. I'm really glad confidentiality is being so quickly added to standards today. It's really been great to see. I've been attending the NIST workshop since the beginning, and it's just amazing to see all of you folks starting to offer these things. But on authentication, and I guess this is my takeaway. It is time for us to work together, roll up our sleeves, and actually work on the hard problems. I can do the victory lap on bullet number 3, yay, but bullet number 4, you know, we have to, it requires all of us together. It is the whole ecosystem that needs to work. And with that, I'm happy to take questions for like what.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. So feel free to line up if you have any questions. We have a few minutes to take them, and if we have any remotely as well, we'll go through those, but we'll start over here.
Sure. So if I'm buying a bunch of new computers starting in 27, I expect them to be able to either be running QR or upgradable to QR, what have you. In 30, I expect any computer that's actually sitting on your network, not just the ones you've just added, but anything sitting on your network should be capable.
All right. Do we have any questions, Phil, remotely?
Can everybody hear me? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. How do NSA and ONCD differentiate the respective roles in terms of driving quantum-safe migration?
I mean, NSA has very specifically delineated authorities. We work very closely with ONCD and the rest of government when it pertains to national security systems. I think I laid it out in the second slide there that NSA's job is setting requirements. We differ slightly from NIST in that, in addition to setting national security standards, we also, on the flip side, are responsible for ensuring that they are adhered to. So NIAP is related to us, and but ONCD is the White House's office for cyber policy.
All right, and we'll head back to the room.
First of all, thank you. My name is Ton. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm listening to your story, to your presentation, maybe from a different angle. And I'm somewhat of concern. What are your personal concerns when you look at everything you know in relation to public, society, and, for example, your own municipality? Can they keep up in the next coming 72 months?
Boy, I have to say that as an officer of the National Security Agency being asked to talk about my own municipality, I'm not entirely sure what the question is. I think, in general, with quantum transitions, though, if we're tying to that, I will say, like, NSA is very much leveraging the fact that we are expecting, and in confidentiality, it seems to be the case, that it will become more or less a de facto what people do if they're not trying. Municipalities and other folks hopefully can benefit from that just as we have. For questions about non-national security systems, though, that really falls far outside my purview.
But will it keep up? Because that's society. Do you think it will keep up?
We can have a fine conversation offline about Morgenstern's beliefs.
All right, I'll pass it back to Phil one more time.
Sure. So does limiting the algorithm choices under CNSA 2.0 and fixing the security category at level 5 cause performance issues, especially for systems with older resources or for constrained environments/devices?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, I mean, we're going to hear later lots of talks about where things are stressed or not stressed. That said, I'm looking very much into the future, and for things that will be purchased, for systems we expect to come online in 35 and systems we expect, or 32 systems we expect to still be around then. At the moment, this is the path forward. I really would love to hear from industry about where that falls short, and also work with you all on, how is it that we change protocols? Andy brought up the smart cards, for instance. How do we change protocols to make sure that we make use of the tools we have?
All right, we'll pass it back to the room.
Can you clarify the specific use case for using SHA-3 for secure boot that you had in there? You know, SHA-2's kind of been specified as what y'all want, but SHA-3 is like, hey, you can use it for secure boot. What's that use case that you're thinking of? Is it part of another signature?
No,
or?
so one reason LMS makes for a very good, and this is a part of the end. I do not claim, the nice thing about standards is you throw them out in the world and you see what happens. But a great thing about LMS, and why we had sort of assumed likely that it'd be a SHA-2 based LMS that was used everywhere, was LMS relies on a hash, and hashes are frequently in hardware. And so the hardware people were already planning to have was already able to easily validate the LMS signature. As it turns out, some platforms had SHA-3 at that lowest of low levels, and certain subcomponents maybe have SHA-3 at that level. At which point, maybe their protocol that they're using for signing involves SHA-3. And so that would be an example. That's just outside the LMS boundary, and we were specifically making allowances so that we could ensure that gear being purchased starting this year is secure, and so that extends to sort of that notion.
Okay, so it was speed of transition, not anything else.
It's very much, it's a very narrow use case.
Okay.
That's in a very controlled space, and your option is having things ready in 25 or having things ready in a number of years after.
Thank you.
All right, we are up schedule, so we'll just take the one last question queued in the room.
Real quick one. So, CNSA sets the direction, but really when the rubber meets the road, we're talking about common criteria and the protection profiles. Do you have roadmap of when that, because those are pretty important dependencies?
I don't have anything that I'm ready to share right now, but we are very much working on it, and I'm happy to chat with you and get you in contact with our common criteria folks.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much to Morgan. Appreciate it.